Welcome to ETAuto. Today we have Zac Hollis, Director for Marketing, Sales and Service for Skoda Auto India. Zac has a very interesting background. Right from farming, he has come to selling cars. As a child, he grew up in a poultry farm, and with different activities, now he has taken up different aspects of selling cars. He started in finance with Volkswagen in 1990. Then he joined Skoda Auto in 1994. Basically, he moved from Volkswagen to Skoda in 1994 and had also been to China, the most vibrant market in Asia. And now he's in India, which with a strategy for 2.0, where Skoda VW Group is trying to reinvent and emerge as a big player. Welcome to ETAuto, Zac, and thank you so much for spending your time with ETAuto. I welcome you to our TV channel and the digital platform.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Chanchal. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to a good conversation, and hopefully to tell your viewers some of my thoughts on what's happening in the Indian car market, and of course some of Skoda's plans going forward.
Zac, I would like to start with the entire world is gripped with COVID. This is a COVID time, and we would move into an era of before COVID and after COVID. Auto industry is hugely impacted from this pandemic. India is amongst the few markets where the recovery could be much faster than expected. But for the time being, what has been the learnings for Skoda Auto? How do you see the recovery panning out? It's a slow and gradual start that is happening. What is your learning, and how do you see things shaping up? What is the strategic part for Skoda Auto India?
I think this is a good question, and it's the question on the front of everybody's minds. If you first of all take a global perspective, obviously we saw the first impacts of the COVID-19 in China, and business shut down in China. What happened then is that, of course, the Chinese were the first our Chinese business was the first to embrace the new normal, where you had a very high level of sanitization. You also had business starting to move online in China also. But what did happen is the business picked up very fast in China. It picked up very fast for I think for a number of reasons. Partly there was some pent-up demand with people who would have bought a car during the shutdown period and now came along and bought a car. And the second reason is that people feel that a car is a safe space. It's a safe space for themselves, and of course it's a safe space for their family in terms of controlling the infection. So we had a good demand in China, and then of course we took some of that learning also into India. If you look to Europe, our factories reopened in May, and now we are running at full capacity. So the Skoda factories here in Malada Boleslav and our 3 factories in the Czech Republic are running at full capacity. Our product launches are back on plan. Here in Europe, we're now introducing the first of the electric cars into the European markets, and that's all going quite well. So the markets are picked up. The markets are very strong. What you're also seeing in some European markets is incentives. Incentives have been introduced, I think, in France already, to try and get the motor industry working a little bit, because of course the motor industry is vitally important for all the economies where there are car factories, there are dealers, etc., etc. So we're seeing quite a good business now picking up in Europe. Again, the question is, it's unclear how much of it is pent-up demand and how much of it is good economic growth and economic activity. If you look at what's happening in India, what we're seeing in India now is that the Indian industry is starting to reopen in India, and we are now, our 2 factories in Aurangabad and Pune are operating in line with our capacity plans. I think we are not producing the same number of cars per hour as we would have done, because we have introduced social distancing, we've introduced sanitization, and all of these things take a little bit longer. So we've got longer breaks within shifts, for example. Because of the social distancing and sanitization, we've got less people working on a car in terms of the production line also, because of sanitization and social distancing. So nevertheless, we're able to meet the capacity and meet the plans that we had. If you look at it from a dealer perspective, what we had is from May, we had dealers starting to open up in different parts of the country. I think it started in Kerala, where Kerala, the cases were quite low, and then dealer businesses opened up. So, but what you had is a limited number of people allowed into the dealership. So in Mumbai, for example, we only have 10% of the people allowed into the dealership. But if you go to some markets, we have as much as 100% of people allowed into the businesses. And it's very important for us to get the workshops back up and running as fast as possible, because the workshops are very important. We've got to keep people's cars on the road where they need servicing and repairs, but it's also very important for the viability of our dealers, because the dealers earn the majority of their money everywhere in the world from the service business. That's where business comes from. And of course, we need the service going through. So at the moment, for the month of June, we will be around 70% in terms of our service business, what we call throughputs, as the same period 2019. So this is very good, and this is very positive for our dealers. What we are finding is that we're getting, Chanja, certain areas of the country are then locking down again. Because we're getting increases in cases, they're locking down again. So Tamil Nadu, as you're aware, cities like Chennai have then locked down again. And of course, then that affects our ability to do business. So that is happening from a workshop point of view. But nevertheless, I'm quite pleased how it's going. I'm very pleased at the positive attitude taken by all of our staff across all of our businesses, and the way that they're adapting to the situation. And of course, the way they're adapting to the social distancing and the sanitization. If we come back to car sales, we launched 3 new cars, as you know, on the 26th of May through our virtual launch. And I am so happy with the way this is going so far. The new TSI engine in Rapid has been very well received by the car buying public. And actually, we have the same level of bookings for our cars, for Rapid, as we had in 2019. And remember, in 2019, we had a diesel and a petrol. Now we only have a petrol. We have the all-new TSI engine, but yet we've got the same amount of bookings as we had in 2019. So that's an indication also of where the industry is moving more towards petrol. Karoq is also going very well, and of course we also launched the Superb. So I'm very pleased with the way things are going at the moment, which actually shows that Indian people there's still a desire out there for buying a car at the moment.
How do you see the market changing? Because what has happened in the past few days, especially in the market Delhi, diesel prices have shot up and they have overtaken petrol. So diesel is much more expensive than, slightly expensive, and expected to be much more expensive than petrol in coming months. How do you see the demand changing, and what are your plans in terms of product mix, fuel mix? How do you see that you have a flexible approach even if the market shifts to petrol, or because right now we have seen that India was a diesel market in 2012-13, 60% cars were sold over diesel. But over the years, there has been a shift to petrol. And now with diesel almost becoming at par with petrol, and some markets is even more expensive. And the shift is coming towards petrol. How do you see Skoda capitalizing on this shift and the customer preference?
As you already said, just in your question there, we're already seeing a shift in the market for some years away from diesel towards petrol, and that's not only happening in India. We've seen it happen hugely in Europe also. If you go back 10 years in markets like the UK, where I spent quite a lot of time, diesel was seen as the right fuel. It was environmentally friendly. It was more economical. It was good for long distance drives, etc., etc. This has now changed completely. Diesel is seen as being not a very clean fuel, and you're seen as being more polluting. And you've seen demand for diesel dropping massively in Europe, and we're seeing the same in India. I expect that trend to continue. I expect that trend 100% to continue, but I expect what will happen is that petrol cars will become much more efficient. So we have cars like with TSI technology. So we replaced the 1.6 MPI engine in Rapid with a new 1 litre TSI engine. So we went from a 1.6 1600cc capacity engine down to a 1 litre 3-cylinder TSI engine. And we have more power, more torque, and 25% more fuel efficiency. So what you will see, I think, in the short to medium term is more fuel efficient petrol engines coming, that actually people will, and there is no longer a business case for buying diesel in the Indian market, because as you quite rightly said, diesel is becoming more expensive than petrol. Diesel cars are more expensive to purchase in the first place. by as much as 10% or 10 to 15%. They are more expensive to maintain also than petrol cars, so your service costs are more. And if you're not getting okay, they're still slightly more economical, but you have to do a lot of kilometers. It's 20,000 kilometers plus in a year before they're actually a business case behind diesel. So I can see that trend continuing towards petrol, but I can see petrol engines becoming much more efficient, like, for example, the 1-liter TSI engine that we have.
And will that change the Volkswagen strategy in India in terms how the product mix and also your launches? You have a couple of launches. You're planning to launch the Rapid Automatic. How do you see going forward and the impact coming from COVID in terms of product strategy and launch?
So, I mean, we already, as a brand, have a TSI only strategy. This is our strategy at the moment going forward. I wouldn't say diesel is dead completely. We're currently evaluating a diesel engine for the bigger cars, what we call the parts and component cars, such as Kodiaq, that we may still get a diesel engine in this car. But certainly for the small cars, our strategy is TSI. You're right. In September, we will launch the automatic version of the Rapid with a TSI engine. So, I mean, we have no intention of going back to a small car with a diesel engine. We will continue with the TSI strategy that we have in the short to medium term.
Has COVID made some impact on your 2020 strategy with regard to product launches? You were there in Auto Expo. You showcased many exciting products. How do you see the year panning out and probably some impact on the next year?
Yeah, so Auto Expo seems a long time ago now, to be honest. I mean, it seems it wasn't that long ago, but it does seem a long time ago now. So we actually highlighted the Auto Expo, all of our Barrett Stage 6 petrol cars. The plan was to launch those cars one after the other in April. But one of the benefits of launching those cars one after the other is we had the opportunity to get really good maximum exposure from marketing and PR in 3 different tranches. We took the decision, because of COVID-19, to launch these cars together in May as a digital launch with a virtual launch, which I'm sure you've seen on the 26th of May. This was the right decision, and I have to say it was incredibly successful. We had 100,000 viewings in 24 hours, and we actually touched 400 million people in terms of who knew that launch was happening. So it was a fantastic reception we had to the launch. If you look going forward, originally the plan was to introduce the Octavia A8 right at the end of this year. This will now come in the first quarter 2021, the Octavia A8. And we are still working very hard with our engineering and production teams to get the India 2.0 car still on track for Q2 2021. So they've got their work cut out, but this is the target that they've been set by us in sales and marketing. We need that car as quickly as possible. And of course, it has been impacted, surely, but they're doing their best to recover any delays to that car.
In today's time, people are changing their preference in terms of cars. They're looking more towards hatchback. Is there a right time that you might strategize your Fabia coming back to India? Is there a possibility that you might reconsider and you bring back hatchback to the Indian market?
I think I wouldn't say there's a strategy towards moving towards hatchbacks. I think there's a strategy. The customer demand will continue to drive towards SUVs. This is my opinion, and also small SUVs will become popular as well. So the hatchback is of course will always be there as a part of the Indian market. And at the moment, as you're aware, we will launch 2 cars under the India 2.0 program. First, we will launch a mid-sized SUV in Q2 2021, and then right at the end of 2021, we will launch a sedan on the India 2.0 program. But what we have done now is we will then have engineered the MQB A0 India platform, and this is a universal platform that we are using for both of those cars. And then we have the possibility to look at different body styles on top of that. Now, those different body styles could be a hatchback, could be a smaller SUV, could be a smaller sedan. It's really up to us to look at the business case and work out what's the right body style. So I wouldn't say a hatchback is out of the question. We need to assess what's the right product to bring in the next phase of India 2.0. You might even call that India 3.0. But again, using the MQB A0 India platform.
In a market like India, dealers play a very critical role. Skoda in the past have had all kind of challenges with their dealers. retaining them and kind of propelling its business, which almost led to inconsistent sales. There were kind of fluctuations. And COVID has given a huge impetus in terms of challenges to the dealership and the retail front. Companies are also looking at digital as a new avenue, but there's a mix in terms of both digital and brick and mortar. The physical will continue. How do you see the market shaping up in terms of in these times, customers buying cars? Will there be a shift? And how do you see your dealers playing critical role in forwarding Skoda brand in the market?
The dealer will always, in my opinion, be an integral part of the experience of buying a car in India. This will always be there, both from a sales point of view and, of course, a service point of view. We were one of the first brands in India to launch a contactless order, a digital order online experience. So you could order the Octavia RS online only. It was not available to order at the dealers, and it was available only to order online. We did this because actually we only had 200 cars. We anticipated more demand than that. We were right, there was more demand, but we wanted to do it across, to allow everyone across India to have a fair opportunity to purchase the car and not to go to your local dealer and your local dealer said, sorry, I had an allocation of 3, you're the 4th customer, so I can't get it. So we did that with Octavia RS online, very, the first people to do that. All of our cars can be booked online. We have a complete contactless sales experience. And I actually even got a mail from a customer just the other day saying he bought the entire car online. He had the contactless experience. The car was delivered to him. It was demonstrated to him. The driver was wearing gloves and a mask, and we had that contactless experience. It's not for everyone, but the facility is there to do that. Personally, I think in the long term, people still will go back to the dealership experience. I think it's, a car is the second biggest thing purchase that most people make in their lives. They'll buy an apartment or a house, and then they will buy a car. This is normally, it's the second biggest thing that they buy ever. And I think, it's the whole experience that a dealership gives is important part of that process. But nevertheless, for those customers that don't want to visit a dealership, we have a full contactless experience, sales experience available. When you look at the dealers itself during this COVID-19 situation, so we've worked quite hard to support our dealers to make sure we've got all our long-term dealer partners with us ready for India 2.0. So we've worked hard to support them in terms of liquidity. So this was paying the dues we owe them for warranty work or for bonuses and achievements in terms of normal standards. We paid those very quickly at the start of the COVID-19. Plus, we supported them in terms of some support for their fixed costs also. And we will continue to do that going forward because, without that support, at the moment we will we have a network which is designed around the volumes we need for India 2.0, and we need to get them to that point going forward. So I'm very happy with the way our partners have also coped with this period at the moment.
Skoda has a fairly large global operation, and you have been in China, you have been in Europe, you have seen diverse markets, and now India. What has been the key learnings from your global colleagues? How they have been kind of coping with COVID times and the struggle and the crisis that's going around in different markets of the world, and how you're trying to put the best foot forward for Skoda through those learnings?
I think you're right. I mean, it was one of the first things that happened. Obviously, as I said to you earlier, China was at the front of this, the pandemic. And of course, our Chinese operation were the first to try out things, the first to try how do we sanitize the workshops, how do we work with a contactless experience, and what's happening with consumer demand. So I must admit, our colleagues in Boleslav, who are managing the Chinese operation, very quickly put together some presentations for us and sent them round to all of the markets saying, here are some best practice from the Chinese, to get some best practice from the UK market as well. The UK had a very good process of contactless experience around the vehicle demonstration. So the walk round of the vehicle demonstration in the showroom, the UK did that digitally. So you can sit at home, but yet you can have a salesman demonstrate the features and the benefits of a car. We took that as best practice as well. So our colleagues here in the factory in Boleslav were very good at sending us best practice. And we followed this through. So I'm very pleased with how things are going. And not only in terms of sanitization, but how do you keep, it's very important for people's mental well-being. At the moment, I'm a technician. I go into a dealership every day. I work on cars, I mend cars, and now I'm at home. How do we keep this guy busy? because it's very hard for him mentally as well. So we did a lot of online training courses for him. We did a lot of, we did a lot of games and quizzes, and of course, because our technical and our area managers cannot visit dealers either. So we took a lot of that learning and that experience from other markets as well. But of course, a lot of it came from China because it was one of the first markets to go through this.
Skoda, if I can take back you to some history, started as a premium car maker. It was a very aspirational brand. I remember that these were the times when only one German luxury brand was available, and they were very limited choice in the luxury market. Skoda was perceived as a hugely premium, close to luxury brand. And then the smaller cars came, and VW also debut India market. Things started changing from a premium brand. You also launched very mass market models, and now you are expanding the strategy. How do you see Skoda's journey from premium to mass and now becoming in a different league? Is Skoda still a premium brand? I know it's a premium brand to aspire, but what is your strategy? You want to remain as a premium brand, or you still want to cut corners and go to mass market?
I think you can do mass market without cutting corners. I think what we have to do is we have a positioning in India, as you said, of a premium brand. In fact, many people have said this positioning is something called value luxury. So if you take cars like Kodiaq, like Octavia, and of course Superb, we are creating a luxury car for someone, but at a value proposition. And this positioning is very important also for India in India 2.0. So we want to also give people an experience, not only when they're buying a car, but also in terms of the experience of being in the car, that even when I spend a much lower amount, even when I spend much less than 20 lakh on a car, I still have this value luxury proposition. So we will not be compromising on quality of our cars. We will not be compromising on design of our cars. And we make sure we've got the features which represent that value luxury within our cars. So I think that positioning is very important for us. We will keep that positioning as we go into the market with much more affordable cars in order to grow our volume in India.
That answer of yours take me to my next question in terms of features. Features play a very critical role because there's so many new nomenclatures that are coming to the market: connected cars, futuristic cars, internet cars. How do you see that changing in Skoda, and how do you see the transition happening in terms of ICE engine to electric cars? Do you feel that Indian market is right in terms of making a transition to those future generation of new energy cars? How do you see customers' behavior as well as the aspiration changing? Is the connected cars, is the electric cars, or it's a new kind of generation that Indian customers are aspiring for? And where do you see as a European car maker, as a leading European car maker, making this change?
Let's split that question into two parts. First, let's split that question into connected cars, and then we'll talk about new energy vehicles later. If you look at connected cars, so, I mean, there are some features within a connected car which are really useful for the customer, and lots of information is useful for a customer in terms of his management. There are some features of a car which are cool to show off to your friends, but I'm not sure after a few weeks whether you're going to use such a feature. What we've got to make sure with connected cars, that we're giving people what people want from connected cars, because I don't want to invest a lot of money in developing gadgets which actually don't really deliver benefits and just look cool in marketing. So that's one thing that I will be doing in terms of connected cars going forward. If you look at electric cars, now clearly I have to say that I strongly believe the long-term future of the automotive industry everywhere around the world is electric cars. We cannot keep burning fossil fuels the way we are. But what you're seeing at the moment is that the electric cars on the marketplace, mostly in Europe and America, but also even coming to India, are very niche. They're quite niche, they're quite expensive, and even where they're affordable, I'm sure there's not a business case for the manufacturer. It's more like making a statement than in anything else. And part of the reason for that is that the cost, a big proportion of the cost of the electric car is the battery. It's as much as 30% of the cost of the electric car is the battery. So if such a high proportion of the cost of a car is the battery, you create a business case by making a big car, making the car more expensive, because you've got to recover the cost of the battery. Because the cost of a battery in a car that's in a high-end car is the same as the cost of the battery in a low-end car. Yeah. So what we've got to see, there's some number of things that need to start happening before we find the cost of electric cars going down and becoming more affordable. Firstly, we need to expand the capacity for making batteries, and of course, ultimately, you need to make them in India. If on a mass basis to make electric cars affordable to build. The next thing you've got to have is the infrastructure in place. I mean, I asked many journalists who asked me a question, would you buy an electric car at the moment? And they think about it and then they say no. And part of the reason is because it's okay if I have a charger at home and I drive to the office and I drive back again. But I'm living in Mumbai. What happens when I want to drive to Pune or to Kolhapur or somewhere like that? I'm nervous at where will I charge my car? How long will it take to charge my car? Et cetera, et cetera. So we've got to get down that level of that range anxiety. And for that, we need the infrastructure in place. So the infrastructure will come over time. But of course, what you also find with many countries that are advanced in electric cars, such as some Chinese cities, not all over China, but some Chinese cities, it's driven by government intervention. It's driven by government forcing people into electric cars rather than the business case being for the consumer to be electric cars. For example, if I look to a city like Shanghai, if you buy a registration plate in Shanghai, it will cost you around something like 800. No, it can cost as much as the car. 8 lakh would you pay for the registration plate for the car. But then if you buy an electric car, you get it for free. So the business case is very clear to buy an electric car, and that's why people are buying electric cars. But they're often buying them as second cars, etc. So it will come. The cost of batteries needs to come down with mass production, and the infrastructure needs to come. If you look at when will it come, I'm not sure you will see many electric cars on the market for the next 5 years. I don't see it happening within the next 5 years. Certainly not in India.
Skoda is shaping up the VW group in India in terms you are the lead brand right now, and you will take up the entire game of strategy for VW group. How do you see your strategies changing in Corona times, in the COVID era, when people are changing their buying preferences? Everybody is trying to conserve cash. People are looking for value proposition. The cost of operations is becoming a major issue with regard to buying decision of customers and overall acquisition of the product, in terms of people are willing to buy cars, but they are downgrading their purchase decision. They might be looking at more cheaper options. Maybe probably a person who was looking for a sedan may end up buying a hatchback. A person looking for a premium hatchback would end up buying a smaller compact car. So for that strategy, which will have a huge impact on a market like India, what kind of strategy you feel should be ideal for Skoda as the lead brand from VW Group?
I think there's a number of impacts of coronavirus on the medium-term economic outlook and on consumer behavior, which is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The first thing I can see happening is that the used car market will also take a much greater role also. So people might not have considered a car, but now they want to spend 2 and 3 lakh on a car. They can't buy a new car for that, so they will buy a used car. So, for example, we are launching used car strategies for our dealers, and our dealers will start selling used cars. And then you have to think, well, why should you buy a car from a dealer? Well, of course, we will make sure that that car has good integrity in terms of its ownership credential. We will give the car customer warranty in terms of the used car as well. And, and we will give people that whole ownership, that different kind of purchasing experience from used cars. So I can see used cars increasing going forward. What happens then in terms of small cars? And what we did is, at the moment, we launched a Rapid Rider, which was a campaign model that we launched at the bottom end of Rapid, and the demand has been incredible. We've had phenomenal demand for that car, because we're not only giving someone who was considering buying a sub 4 meter sedan. We're saying, look, for just a small amount more, 1 lakh more, you can actually buy a full size sedan to keep your family much safer and to give yourself much more room. So that's one of the strategies we did from that point of view. So in terms of strategy, I think used cars is a clear strategy. Having entry-level models like Rapid Rider is a clear strategy for the medium term. If you look at this for the long term, I think for the long term, the Indian economy will continue to grow. I think, if we sit down and have this conversation in 3 years' time, we might find that actually, the economy is back where it needs to be. It's growing by 5-6% plus, and the car market continues to grow. I've got full confidence in the Indian economy recovering from this. I've got full confidence in the car market recovering, and I've got full confidence that our investments in terms of India 2.0 are safe and will deliver the returns that we want.
And that brings me to my last question. That is basically, you seems to be a strong proponent of SUVs. You're amongst the few guys who strongly believe that SUVs will have a good traction. Customers will buy this body shape. There has been good demand for SUVs past couple of years, and the emergence of compact SUVs has been a very strong phenomena. Last month, there was a compact SUV that was the largest sold model in India. Can you just share your perspective in terms of how SUV will drive growth for Skoda India?
The SUV market is not just in India. I mean, the SUV market around the world has grown since it started sort of 20 years ago. And there are a number of reasons for that. I mean, it makes people feel safe and comfortable in such a car. People like to sit a bit higher up as well from that point of view. And the design is appealing to modern. The design is appealing to young people. So I think the SUV market is here to stay. And this is why we've seen new entrants to the market in India, starting with SUVs. You know, we've seen the new Korean entrants starting with SUVs, the Chinese starting with SUVs, because this is the biggest and the growing market segment. So when you look at a market like India, of course, the first thing you do is to look, okay, where are the big segments? Where can I make the biggest sales and where can I make the best return? This is in SUVs. I think this is going to continue. You're right. I think compact SUVs will become also very important. India still has this sub 4 meter tax break, which gives advantages to consumers to buy smaller cars. And we've already seen some compact small SUVs coming on the marketplace and being very successful as well. So we will look at those areas also going forward. So yes, SUV will continue to play a role, and the sedan car will also continue for the Indian market too. So both SUV is here to stay, sedans are here to stay, and they will both of those body shapes will continue to play an important a role in the Indian market.
Thank you, Zac Hollis. Thank you so much for talking to ETAuto. And I appreciate your time and your thoughts, and I wish you great in terms of Skoda doing well in India. You will tide through 2020, and going forward, we will see emergence of the European brand to the rightful position.
Thank you very much. I very much enjoyed talking to you, and thank you very much, and stay safe.